Challah, Khaled,
Daled Gimel.
Khaled Gimel. Why am I? Wait, let me get rid of this person. Okay, okay. Two kavs and a kav of rice or a kav of truma is between. These do not combine. A thing from which is challah has been separated lies in between. They combine since it has already become liable to challah. If a new kav and an old kav bit one another, Rabbi Yishmael says, let him take from the middle. But the Chachamim forbid. If one takes challah from a kav, Rabbi Akiva says it is challah, but the Chachamim say it is not challah. And if there were two calves and a challah was taken from each separately he afterwards joined them into one piece of dough, Rabbi Akiva exempts, but the Chachamim declare it liable. Thus, its stringency turns into a leniency.
You see that Daled and Hay are a pair.
Mm-hmm.
That you're seeing two sides of the same coin in terms of the machlokes. Where Rabbi Akiva says that okay, everyone agrees that you're only supposed to take challah on more than 5 logim. But Rabbi Akiva says even if you take challah from 4 logim, that's still valid challah. Where Chachamim say it was nothing; it was a meaningless act. Okay, so now on the other side, however, when you've got if you've got 2 batches of dough that had dough separated according, that was kosher according to Rabbi Akiva, and now they get joined together. Now the Chachamim say, oh, now you've got a batch of dough that needs challah, and the Rabbi Akiva says, no, but we've already taken challah. So that's why we're saying that the kula becomes the chumrah in this
Right.
case. It's both sides are being completely consistent with their opinions, but we're seeing what's the upshot.
But the halakha follows the Chachamim.
Correct. Hmm. Okay, Mishnah Vav. Notel Adam Kedei Chala Me'isa Shelo Hurma Chalasa La'asasa B'tara. All right, so what have you got over here? You've got a dough that hasn't had challah taken from it, um, and he's keeping it aside over here. It's a tahor dough because now he knows that he is going to he's going to be receiving some demai. Let's say he's got a friend who's an amaretz who's going to give him some bread,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't trust his friend because his friend, he's not sure that his friend knows how to take challah properly. So now what does he do? He keeps this table dough aside. Um, why? Lios mafresh aleha v'holech chalas demai ad shetisarach. So he wants to take a nice loaf that his friend gives him, and separate challah for that dough for that bread that he receives from his amaretz friend from the dough that he's got in his kitchen, and he's allowed to keep on doing that, separating challah on behalf of the other loaves until his dough actually becomes putrid.
So he's taking challah of the other dough actually.
Right, so
Correct.
right, and this only works with demai. Why? Because the Mishnah continues, shechalas demai niteles minatahor ala tameh v'shelo minamokaf. Because you're allowed to take, as opposed to other challah, normally challah has to be taken minamokaf. It has to be from the batch that you're
Oh, right.
taking from. Okay, but with demai, seeing as the whole institution of demai is a rabbinic one, and we're going to be a lot more makil. So you can take. We also said that you can't take from tahor on behalf of tameh, because then you might come to touch them, and then the tahor is going to become tameh. So in this case, we say fine. You're allowed to take from tahor on tameh when it comes to demai. Also because it doesn't have to be minamokaf. The reason why we were concerned about taking from tahor for tameh is because you'd have to bring them together.
Okay.
Okay, if you recall that we had this little trick of I think it was Rabbi Eliezer said that you can put something in between the two of them and keep them separate that way. And Chacham said, don't get into it, just don't take from tahor on tameh. Okay, but when it comes to demai, we're more lenient on this. Okay. Yisrael shehayu arisin legoyim b'Syria. Okay, now remember the status of Syria is that it's Minatora. This is not Eretz Yisrael. However, Chachamim extended some of the rules of Eretz Yisrael to Syria, so that if a Jew is farming in Syria, then he has to take Trumas and Masros. However, if a Goy farms in Syria and the Jew buys the produce from him, there's no obligation. Okay, so it all depends on the ownership of the land. Okay, so here's a Yisrael who's an aris. You remember what an aris is? A sharecropper. So
Right. Okay.
the land belongs to the goy, and the Jew goes and farms it, and they take percentages. Okay, so whatever it is, whether it's a half, a quarter, a third, whatever their agreement is. Okay, so now the Jew is the farmer, but the goy owns the land. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev peroseim b'masros b'shvius. He says you have to observe masros and shvius in this case. But Rabban Gamliel poter. Rabban Gamliel says the land still belongs to the goy. There's absolutely no chiyuv over here for Trumas and for Trumas and Mastros and not Shvius either, because it all belongs to the goy. Okay, nice and easy. Now comes another little factoid that we have to that we'll only learn about in the next Mishnah what we're talking about. But let's start with it. Okay. Rabban Gamliel omer shtei chalos besuria, Rabbi Eliezer omer chala achas. Okay. So so we say there are two challahs that have to be taken in Syria, and but Rabbi Eliezer says only one portion of challah. Okay. Now, in order to understand this, I'm actually going to jump ahead, seeing as in any case we're going to be learning Mishnah Ches today, which is so it's quite convenient at least that these two are in close proximity, and we're going to come back to Mishnah Zayin so we can understand it better. Okay, so let's go straight to Mishnah Ches. Rabban Gamliel omer shalosh aratzos lechala. There are three districts in terms of the halacha of taking challah. Eretz Yisrael v'ad kaziv chala achas. So in Eretz Yisrael proper, the area that was reconquered by Olei Bavel, the people who came back from Bavel, there the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael is permanent, and we only take one piece of challah, which we can then give to the kohen, because it's all tahor. But we have a problem with parts of with lands that are in Chutz La'aretz. Why? What's the problem with Chutz La'aretz? Is that Chutz La'aretz is tameh. By Gezeres Chachamim, we say that Chutz La'aretz is tameh. So as soon as you make a dough, it's automatically tameh. So you can't give it to the kohen. But on the other hand, okay, but we don't want to forget the halacha of giving the challah to the kohen. So we really do have to give something to the kohen. But then hang on a second. But then people are going to think that it's tahor, and you're going to and they're going to be nichshal because they think that this is tahor, and meanwhile you're in Chutz La'aretz and it's tameh. So what did? They made two challahs. Okay, from in the district from Eretz Yisrael v'ad kaziv chalachas, mikaziv v'ad hanahar v'ad amana shtei chalos. So in the next area, which is outside, I'm not going to get too much into what the geographical boundaries are, but it's bordering Eretz Yisrael proper and going up to a certain river, up to Amana. Okay, there they take two pieces of challah. Achas la'ur v'achas la'kohen. One is going to be burned, and one is going to be for the kohen. Okay, you need to burn one to show that this is actually tameh, but we also want to give some to the kohen, so that we don't forget this din of that challah actually has to go to the kohen. Okay, shel ur yesh la shiur. Now the portion that's going to be burned, that's the shiur. That's the one that's got to be 1/48. Okay, you've got to give that 1/48 for the burning. Why? Because that's the ikar. That's the main thing, because you're still in the area where the Olei Mitzrayim came to. So there's still some high level of kedusha to it, and therefore we have to take the 1/48th piece and burn that. Mishal kohen ein la shiur, and whatever else you feel like taking off of the kohen, it doesn't have any particular shiur. You can take that off and give it to the kohen, and of course you have to tell him, look, it's tameh, but it's just the gesture of giving to the kohen is the important thing that we wanted to remember. Okay. Further out in this, again we have two challahs that you take. Achas le'ur v'achas le'kohen. One to be burned and one to be given to the kohen. Shel ur ein la shiur. This time, however, the burning has got no shiur. V'shel kohen yesh la shiur. Now this is all for sure tameh anyway, and it's all going to go to waste. So and there's no and since we're now no longer in Eretz Yisrael proper, we still want to have some sort of heker that this is that it needs to be burned, that it is tameh, but there's no need. But since this whole we've now moved into the area where the taking of challah is no longer doraisa. So since we're going to give some to the kohen and some has to be burned, no, don't waste so much. Take a small shear and burn that, and give the rest to the kohen. Shall kohen yesh lashir. So the 1/48th piece that must go to the kohen still now. Okay, utvul yom ochla, and furthermore, even somebody who is a tvul yom is allowed to eat it. Now that's an interesting point over here. That's a kohen who's a tvul yom.
Right.
He's allowed to eat this chalas ha'ur shel chutz la'aretz. Shehoel v'hi midivrei sofrim hekiluba. So because since it is only a derabanan, they are makil on it. But this is what Bartanura says. You can actually eat the piece that's supposed to be burned. No, is that right? Yesh mefarshim shekavanas hamishna lechalas hanitzenes lekohen v'hi ba'ala shmeinu she'af al pi shechalas Eretz Yisrael asura ba'achila b'tvul yom. Even though the challah, yeah, this sounds a little more reasonable to me. That even though challah from Eretz Yisrael is asur for a tvul yom to eat, right? Because it's like truma. Mikol makom chalas chutz la'aretz hanitzenes lekohen muteres lo. But this challah that's given to a kohen in chutz la'aretz to eat, that's mutar for a tvul yom to eat. Shohel v'lo niskana ela leheker, because the only reason it's given to him is just as a heker. It's not real truma. It's not real challah. Okay, so therefore they make it learn it. But the challah that has to be burned, that's still asur even for a tahor kohen, because it's like because that we're comparing. It's similar to the challah minatora, which is tameh and asur to be eaten. Okay, so even a tvul yom in chutz la'aretz, a tvul yom kohen is allowed to eat this. Rabbi Yossi Omer eino tzarich tevila. He says, forget about it. You don't even need tevila for this. Even if the kohen is tameh, as long as it's not a serious tumah, as long as it's a light tumah. For example, if he's a rishon l'tumah now, like let's say he touched a dead sheretz. So now, okay, so he's a rishon l'tumah. Okay. But he says, Asura lazavim lazavos, when somebody is an avatuma, if they're a zav or a zava or a nida or a yoledis, so there the person himself is an avhatuma, and therefore that sort of person would not be allowed to eat the challah in chutz la'aretz. Okay. V'necheles im hazar ala shulchan, and it's also okay to eat with a non-kohen at the same table. Okay. This normally a kohen would not be allowed to put his truma or his challah onto the same table as his non-kohen friend, because it could be a mechshol. His non-kohen friend might come to eat from it. But with this, it's already derabanan, and worst comes to worst, the non-kohen eats from it. Okay, no, it's okay. So v'nitenes lechol kohen, and it may be given furthermore to any kohen. So the Yisrael who wants to give his challah to a kohen, normally you have to be makpid with kohen in Eretz, with challah in Eretz Yisrael, and as with truma, you have to be careful only to give it to a kohen who's careful about tara and tuma, because you don't want him to be matame the dough. But when it comes to this dough of chutz la'aretz, there he can give to any kohen, and he doesn't have to be particularly makpid, because as Rabbi Yossi says, there's no need for tevila. He can eat it even b'tumah. So this is all what in Rabbi Yossi's words. I think this is the sefer is also Rabbi Yossi. Yeah.
It could be. It says it could be eaten at a table with a non-priest.
Yeah.
Not the hell he might eat it and may give it.
So even if the Yisrael eats it, no, it wasn't a doraisa. He didn't do anything asami doraisa. You don't need to make a gezer on a derabanan. Okay, so now that we have clarified this concept of two pieces of challah, let's go back to Mishna Zayin where we jumped across here. Okay, so we just saw in the beginning of Mishna Zayin that Rabbi Eliezer holds that you've got to treat Surya, when you've got the aris, he's got a partial ownership of the land. He's not got partial ownership. He's working the land, and therefore he has to take Chumas and Masros, and he has to observe Shvius. And Rabban Gamliel says nonsense. It doesn't belong to him. Now comes the other side of this coin, where Rabban Gamliel says, Shtei chalos besuria. It's chutz laaretz. You take 2 chalas. You've got one that has to be burned and one that has to be given to the Kohen. Okay, it's just like chutz laaretz. Rabbi Eliezer says, chala achas. Says you only need to take 1 chala. Why? Because again, here's Rabbi Eliezer who's looking at this land in Syria that's being worked by a Jew, and he says, in this respect, it's completely like Eretz Yisrael. He's got ownership of it, and he's got a certain amount of ownership of it. And when he takes challah, he doesn't need to take 2 challahs. He only needs to take 1, just like Eretz Yisrael. So you see that they're talking about it's 2 sides of the same coin.
Right.
Okay, so now we've excuse me. Okay, so now we see the argument between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer, and now the Mishnah says, "Achazu kula shel Rabban Gamliel, the kula shel Rabbi Eliezer." So the people in Syria said, "Hey, that's cool. So let's hold like Rabban Gamliel when it comes to Shemitah and Masros, because that's cool. Then we don't have to worry about Masros and Shemitah. Great. And when it comes to Challah, we'll only take 1 Challah, just like Rabbi Eliezer says. Isn't that a great idea?" And they say, you can't do that. Now, there's no imperative in halacha that you always have to say like Rabbi Eliezer, or you always have to say like Rabban Gamliel. You know, we changed the psak follows them, different rabbis under different circumstances. We don't always paskin like one person. Okay, but when it comes to a fundamental point where actually what they're arguing on in this point is actually the same halacha. When Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer have the same fundamental machlokes, and it just shows out in 2 different halachas, then you do have to choose sides. If you're going to hold like Rabban Gamliel, you have to be consistent like Rabban Gamliel, because of the fundamental thing that you're agreeing with him on. Is Syria like Eretz Yisrael, or is it not? If you say it's not like Eretz Yisrael, then you're saying like Rabban Gamliel. If you're saying that it is like Eretz Yisrael, you're saying like Rabbi Eliezer, and then you have to hold both halachas the same.
Right.
Okay. And therefore, after the Chachamim said, you can't do that, guys, you got to choose one side. And they said, okay, we're going to hold like Rabban Gamliel the whole way, and therefore they take two challahs. Okay. So that's our new Mishnahs for the day. Okay, back to Aleph Tes.
Where are we here? Okay. Challah and Truma carry the penalties of death, and the additional 5th are forbidden to non-priests. Are property of the priest, are neutralized in 101, require the washing of hands in sunset, and may not be separated from the clean for the unclean, and only from that which is nearby and from finished products. If one
so that's exactly what we were discussing earlier, that you can't separate from clean for unclean. Yeah.
If one says, let all my threshing floor be truma and all my dough challah, he has said nothing unless he leaves over part of it. Produce from outside the land which entered the land is liable to challah. If it went there from here, Reb Eliezer obligates, Reb Akiva exempts. And soil from outside the land which came to the land in a ship is liable to Maasros and to the 7th year. Reb Yehuda says when the ship touches the ground. Dough which has been kneaded with fruit juice is liable to challah and may be eaten with unclean hands. Okay. And the ship, because the ship connects the ground.
Right. When the ship is the ground, when the ship is actually like touching the ground, then the sand that's inside the ship is considered connected to the ground, and it's got the din of Eretz Yisrael.
Okay.
Mastros base ches.
If one was working with inferior figs, he may not eat superior figs with superior figs. He may not eat inferior figs, but he may remain until he reaches the site of the choice fruit and then eat. If one exchanges with his fellow, one to eat and the other to eat, one to lay out and the other to lay out, one to eat and the other to lay out, he is liable. Reb Yehuda says he who exchanges to eat is liable, to lay out he is exempt. If one was taking figs to his courtyard to lay them out, his children and his household may eat and are exempt. The laborers who work with him, they are not entitled to maintenance from him, and they may eat and are exempt, and if they are entitled to maintenance from him, they may not eat. Okay.
One more. Mamotzi
Oh, that was
base.
That was 3, right?
That wasn't. We've got Mishnah base as well.
If one takes laborers onto the field, if they are not entitled to maintenance from him, they may eat and are exempt. But if they are entitled to maintenance from him, they may eat from the fig tree one by one, but not from the basket or hamper of drying shed.
Kilayim base Dalid.
If one was sown and he decided to plant it, he may not say, I will plant and then I will turn over, but he must turn over and then plant. If it is planted and he decided to sow it, he may not say, I will sow and then I will uproot, but he must uproot and then sow. If he so wishes, he may cut down to less than one handbreadth, sow and then uproot. If his field was sown with caraway or arum, he must not sow on top of them, for they only produce after 3 years. If some aftergrowth of isatis sprang up among grain, and likewise if several species sprang up in the area of a threshing floor, or if among fenugreek diverse plants have grown up, he is not required to weed them out. If he weeded or cut them, he is told uproot all except one species. If one wishes to lay out his field in beds, each serving a different species, but Shammai says the 3 opening furrows, but Beis Hillel said the width of a Sharon yoke, and the words of these are close to the words of those.
All right.
Nagaya.
Nagayim, yeah. Yud Gimel Vav.
Okay. When a house extends over a afflicted house, or a tree extends over a afflicted house, someone who enters the outer one is tahor, and these are the words of Reb Eliezer ben Azariah. Said Reb Elazar, if one of his stones rendered tameh upon entering, the house itself should certainly render tameh upon entering. Someone tameh is standing under a tree, and someone tahor passes under the tree, the tahor person becomes tameh. If someone tahor is standing under a tree and someone tameh passes underneath, the tahor person remains tahor. If the tameh person stops, the tahor person becomes tameh. The same is true when an afflicted stone is mobile. The tahor person remains tahor, but if he put the stone down, the tahor person becomes tameh. If the tahor person put his head and most of his body in a tameh house, he becomes tameh. If a tameh person put his head and most of his body into a tahor house, it makes it tameh. If a tahor garment of which 3 by 3 finger breadths were put into a tameh house becomes tameh, if someone put an olive-sized piece of a tameh garment into a tahor house, the house becomes tameh. If someone
Yeah,
enters,
that's it. That's 3. Rikavos. On Vav Yud.
okay. There are 5 acquisitions that the Holy One, blessed be He, blessed is He, acquired for Himself in His world, and these are the Torah, one acquisition; heaven and earth are one acquisition. Abraham is one acquisition, Israel is one acquisition, and the temple is one acquisition. From where it is known that Torah is one acquisition, for it is written, Hashem made me as the beginning of his way before his deeds of yore. From where it is known that heaven and earth are one acquisition, for it is written, Thus said Hashem, my heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. What house could you build for me, and what place could be my resting place? And it states, How abundant are your works, Hashem, with wisdom you made them all, they fill the earth, your acquisition. From where it is known that Abraham is one acquisition, for it is written, He blessed him, saying, Blessed is Abraham of God, the Most High, maker of heaven and earth. From where it is known that Israel is one acquisition, for it is written, Until your people passes through, Hashem, until this people you have acquired passes through. And it states, For the sake of the holy ones who are interred in the earth, and for the mighty, all my desires are fulfilled because of them. From where it is known that the temple is one acquisition, for it is written, The foundation of your dwelling place that you, Hashem, has made, the sanctuary, my Lord, that your hands established, and it states, And he brought them to a sacred boundary, this mountain that his right hand acquired. All that the Holy One, blessed He, created in His world, He created only for His honor. As it states, everyone who is called by my name, of whom I have created for my glory, whom I have fashioned, even perfected. And it states, Hashem shall reign for all eternity.
Ajanalach Maseches Avos. Okay, we got one Mishnah from Harias.
Harias. Preceding the festivals, the calamities of, I'm sorry?
Not preceding the festivals. Horias we're looking for.
Harias, I have it right here.
Or based in
Harios. It's right
Aleph
next,
Aleph.
Aleph, right next to Avodah Zorah.
Yeah, so then you I think you were reading from Avodah Zarah there.
No kidding. Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
No worries.
All right. If the court ruled to violate one of the commandments stated in the Torah and an individual went and acted erroneously on their word, regardless of whether they acted and he acted alone with them or they acted and he acted after them, or whether they did not act but he did, he is exempt because he relied on the court. If the court ruled and one of them knew that they had erred and he was a student worthy of ruling and he went and acted on their word, whether they acted and he acted with them, or they acted and he acted after them, or they did not act but he did, this one is liable because he did not rely on the court. This is the rule. One who relies on himself is liable. One who relies on the court is exempt.
Right. So what we're talking about here is where the court erroneously rules that something that is chayiv kares is actually mutar.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a regular Joe in the street who decides to follow the Sanhedrin, it doesn't matter what order we do it in. If he then acts, he's patur. He doesn't have to bring a korban chatas. This is something that the court will have to bring the Helem Davar Shel Tzibor, okay, where they made this mistake. But if it's one of the members of the court himself who knew it was wrong and he was outvoted, okay, he can't protest. He's not allowed to. He's not allowed to do what he knows is wrong. Sorry, he's not allowed to protest against them because they voted against him. But he's also not allowed to follow what he knows is wrong. And if he does do it, then he is actually chayav a korban himself because he's not basing it on the court. He's now doing it based on his own knowledge. So that's talking specifically about someone who's ra'elo haroa, is somebody who's actually like can sit on the Sanhedrin. Right. So any other person below that, if they go ahead and do this chet, then they're patur. But the Sanhedrin is going to have to bring the parahelim davar shel tzibor.
So the court has to decide that he really doesn't know what he's doing. He's not one of these people who can sit on the.
No, the court doesn't decide that. The court. The court then later realizes that they made a mistake and they've got to bring the korban themselves on behalf of the tzibur. Okay. So kasubas based test. Yeah.
A woman who was imprisoned by Gentiles, if because of money, is permitted to her husband, but if it was for the purpose of taking her life, she is prohibited to her husband.
What's the difference is that when the woman's in for a capital offense, then the non-Jewish jailers don't see any. There's no monetary loss. If it's for ransom, then they're gonna they'll be careful because they don't want to damage her value. Right. But if she's gonna die anyway, what the heck? Rahman al-Islam.
A city that was conquered by a besieging troop, all Kohanim's wives found therein are unfit. But if they are witnesses, even a slave, even a maidservant, these are believed. A person is not believed about himself. Said Reb Zechariah ben Akadzav, by this temple her hand did not move out of my hand from the time the Gentiles entered Jerusalem until they left. They said to him, a person cannot testify for himself. And in these cases, people are believed to testify when they are of age about what they saw when they were about what they saw when they were minors. A person is believed to say, this is my father's handwriting, and this is my teacher's handwriting, and this is my brother's handwriting. I remember so-and-so, and that she went out with a veil and with her hair untied, and that so-and-so went out of school to immerse himself in order to eat truma, and that he shared with us on the threshing floor. And this place is a base of paras. And until we used to go to the Sabbath, but a person is not believed to say so-and-so had a right of way in this place, so-and-so had a stopping spot, a eulogizing spot in this place.
So they're believed to remember stuff about Issa V'Heter, about what they saw when they were younger. But when it comes to Mamonos, they're not believed about where somebody had right of way through somebody else's property. That's now taking sides between people.
These are maidens who are entitled to a fine one who is intimate with a mamzeres, a Nisonite or a Kusim, likewise one who is intimate with a proselyte, a captive or a slave, who is ransom converted and emancipated under the age of 3 years and 1 day. If one is intimate with his sister, his father's sister, his mother's sister, his wife's sister, his brother's sister, his father's brother's wife, or with a menstruant, they are entitled to a fine. Although they are liable to karas, they are not liable to the death penalty inflicted by the court.
Right, so this is touching on the halacha that when you've got a conflict between somebody who's chayiv mamon and chayiv misa, you get accumulate with a rabbi. He's exempt from the monetary part because he's chayiv on misa. But in all of these cases, there's no misa. He's chayav kares, yes, but that's not enough to exempt him from the monetary portion. Okay, that's us.
That's it. Okay.
That's
All right.
it.
Did you get the Torah tidbits?
I did indeed.